Donkey Kong!
Nintendo's OG mascot. Besides Mario, who debuted alongside him, but DK's the first to have his name in the title. Starting out as the Italian plumber's first adversary, he would eventually go on to star as the hero of various adventures of his own. Though his solo series comes and goes in terms of relevance, often being overshadowed by that blasted plumber, he still amassed a large following of his own, on top of being a mainstay in the Mario series. I love this funny monkey so much. This barrel throwing, crock punching, banana munching ape gives me life, along with his tribe, his enemies, and of course, his games. Since I've been ranking these Nintendo series like they're Infinity Stones, and since the series recently had its third comeback, I thought this would be a good series to rank after Metroid. Anyway, considering the interesting history of this series, which games made the cut? Obviously the main platformers are here, namely the Donkey Kong Country games, the Land Trilogy, 64, and Bonanza. Considering how important they are to Nintendo and gaming in general, and because I excluded them from the Mario ranking, I thought I'd include the arcade era games as well, including DK94, cause come on. And because I wanted no Kong left behind, I'm even including some of the spin-offs, namely Diddy Kong Racing, Jungle Beat if you consider that a spin-off, and the Pay-On games. Ooh boy, do I have words for two of them. With that said, I don't have time to play every game in the world, so what didn't I decide to include? Obviously, the Game & Watch games don't count. I don't think I need to explain why. Sorry to the 10 fans of Donkey Kong Circus, I guess. I'm also not counting the Donkey Konga trilogy, since they all appear to be the same standard rhythm games, just with the song list switched around. I mean, the third game never even left Japan, and I've never seen anyone clamoring for it to be localized like a certain other third game. The last exclusion is every Mario vs. Donkey Kong sequel. This was a bit of a hard one, since I, no matter what, would be including the GBA original, with it being a follow-up to DK94 and all. In the end, I decided to cut them, since they follow a much different style of gameplay and fall more under Mario's umbrella than Donkey Kong's. Sorry for not feeling like playing 4 functionally identical puzzle games plus Minis on the Move for the sake of a YouTube video. Besides, who really cares about whether or not I rank March of the Minis higher than Minis March Again?
Excuse me? I care?
What the? Emoji? What are you doing here?
How dare you refuse to acknowledge the artistic genius of Mario vs. Donkey Kong Miniland Mayhem? I grew up with that game, damn it!
Alright, if you care about these games so much, why don't you rank them?
Okay.
Wait, I didn't actually... I could probably make a few bucks from that. Now, where was I? Oh yeah, it's on. It's on like... Come on, you know the rest. Donkey Kong Jr. Math. It's math. What do you want me to say? It's literally just math. Let's move on.
This is the story of a man named Stanley.
Donkey Kong 3 is a stupid joke of a game. You play as this random kid named Stanley trying to protect his garden from DK and bugs. You have to push DK to the top while stopping the bugs from eating your plants. It's very annoying having to balance both tasks, since if you focus too much on the bugs, DK will slide all the way down and cost you time or make you lose. Stanley's victory dance is funny, I guess. I don't know what to say. This game is ass. Let's just move on.
Barrel Blaster.
Donkey Kong Barrel Blast. If you were disappointed by the last 2 entries being so short, stop worrying, because unlike those 2 nothing burgers, I actually have stuff to say about Barrel Blast, not much of which is positive. Let's get problem number 1 out of the way, the controls. This game was originally meant to come out on the GameCube and use the DK bongos, but since that system was on its way out, they moved the game over to the Wii, which, despite supporting GameCube games and controllers, doesn't support the bongos, forcing you to speed up and turn by beating the drums with the Wiimote and nunchuck. And yeah, it sucks. It's unbearably clunky having to waggle your remotes, or triggers in my case, just to turn or recover from a crash. And to jump, which you need to do a lot, you have to beat both drums at the exact same time. And it's a complete coin flip as to whether or not the jump will actually register due to how awkward the timing is. Would it have killed Pay-On to program a normal, functional jump button instead of this Kinect BS? Having controls this unintuitive and unresponsive would be a deal breaker for any racing game, being a genre that requires tight focus and precision and all. Thankfully, Barrel Blast makes up for that by featuring some of the most boring and lifeless track design I've ever seen in a racer. They're overly straight with very little going on, themes and layouts get lazily reused multiple times, and some of them are just so long. You're stuck with such dull tracks and annoying controls for far longer than necessary. It couldn't have been that hard to just shave a lap off of some of these tracks. Does this game even do anything right? Well, the character roster is pretty good, mainly because it features my man Lanky Kong. It can be satisfying to chain a bunch of barrel blasts together. The soundtrack's okay, feeling straight out of a 6th gen arcade game, and maybe someone out there might find the challenge mode fun, but I dropped it after World 1, so I wouldn't know. Barrel Blast lives up to the infamy it's garnered over the years, and the fact that it came out less than a year before Mario Kart Wii makes it even more embarrassing by comparison. Why does Scott the Woz have so many copies of this shit?
I'm Donkey Kong Jr., and I'm gonna be taking my father now!
Hey, remember Donkey Kong Jr.? You know, DK's son and sidekick who fell into obscurity since he more or less got replaced by Diddy Kong? He starred in a game named after him, and yep, this sure is another early 80s arcade game. It's basically just more of the 1981 original, except the rules are reversed and there's way more climbing. I kinda like how the climbing works, with your speed depending on your direction and how many vines you grabbed onto. It makes you think about how to move as quickly as possible without dying. Aside from that, yeah, I don't know, it's another old-ass arcade platformer. Cool to look back on, but not very impressive today.
Donkey Kong.
The one game Adam Sandler sucks at. It may not look like much now, but this was the game that set Nintendo on the path to becoming a gaming giant. This simple game about a fat man jumping over barrels to save his girlfriend from a monkey set a new standard for the company and gaming as a whole. It led to the creations of not just the main Mario games, but also Zelda, Metroid, Kirby, and countless other games whose influence came straight from Nintendo. It's a landmark moment in gaming for sure, but when you play it today, you'll see it's aged like a bad banana. The controls are sluggish and bad, the obstacles are annoying and so hard to predict that not even Sam Renner could do it, and worst of all, the fall damage is a joke. You can die by falling like 2 feet off a tiny ledge. I get that Mario's fat, but come on, how is a fall like that supposed to kill anyone? Donkey Kong's an important piece of gaming history that absolutely earns its iconic status, but there's not much of a reason to return to it today other than a history lesson or novelty.
Looks like the only way is to jump onto that bar.
DK King of Swing practically broke my hands. That could be because I played on a keyboard instead of an actual controller or handheld, but still, I do not like how this game plays. It's built entirely around climbing pegs, using the L and R buttons to grab with a designated hand. You jump by pressing or holding down and releasing L and R at the same time. Yeah, I don't really like how this plays that much. It just feels really clunky and uncomfortable, especially with your only real attack requiring a holding charge. And you need to charge a ton to clear out enemies, barrels, and bosses, and as you can imagine, it's not very fun. The levels are very short, with only a handful of rooms each, and as such, they don't leave that much of an impression. Even then, there are still quite a few downright rage-inducing segments that require comically tight precision that made me question whether or not Payon even bothered to playtest the game. Sure, it looks appealing, with the vibrant colors and expressive sprites you'd expect from the GBA, and I guess its short length means you can easily knock it out in an afternoon and move on with your life, but still. King of Swing is a frustrating slog with very little staying power. It had potential to be fun, but Payon just didn't utilize it well.
Here we go!
Again?
Wow, a game I made a negative essay on that isn't dead last in its series ranking. My thoughts on Donkey Kong 64 have pretty much remained the same since that video I made on it over a year ago. It's undoubtedly a game with a ton of ambition, but it ended up biting off way more than it could chew, resulting in a drawn-out, annoying slog of a collectathon. Remember a few years ago when some people tried to gaslight themselves into thinking Mario Odyssey was bad because it has too many moons? DK64 is basically the game those people made Odyssey out to be. It has way too many gold bananas, most of which are obtuse and unsatisfying to collect. Despite being a sandbox game, there's very little freedom, with pretty much every task requiring a specific Kong. And unless you use mods, you have to run to the nearest tag barrel and back for menial tasks like getting a few bananas of a certain color. You need said bananas to open the way to the boss, from whom you get the key to the next world, but you also need X amount of gold bananas to actually get into said world, because we needed some use for them. While there are a few decent levels, the majority of them are bland, annoying, drawn out, and unfun, be it through boring themes or tedious layouts. The 5 Kongs barely feel all that different from each other, and their abilities feel more like gates to certain items rather than fun moves, especially with the interesting ones all being station locked. A lot of collectibles, such as the gold bananas, are locked behind some of the most aggravating gauntlets and minigames that could almost give Mario Party 1 a run for its coins. And you're also forced to play old arcade games for certain items you don't find out you need until right at the end of the game when you need them. To be fair, it has great art direction, great music, great sound design, and it of course blessed us with a DK rap as well as our Lord and Savior Lanky Kong. You deserve to be in much better games, Lanky Kong. DK64 is what happens when you strive so hard to be as big as possible, you forget to fill in the gaps to actually make the experience fun and rewarding. I have no reason to return to it when Banjo-Kazooie exists, which is an infinitely better game in every way. Same with Banjo-Tooie, and honestly, even Nuts and Bolts. Yeah, I went there. Just a complete chore of an experience, and a very disappointing final original DK game from Rare.
Oh, these are pretty cool bananas.
Yeah, I'm talking about the whole Donkey Kong Land trilogy in one entry. These games are so similar in design and quality to me that I might as well talk about them all at once. Okay, maybe not all at once, since I'll still start with the first game. Basically, imagine an expansion to Donkey Kong Country 1, only compressed super hard to fit onto the Game Boy, and you have Donkey Kong Land 1. It's not a direct parallel to its SNES counterpart, as it features different levels and worlds, with the final world being a big city akin to DK's arcade roots. There's just one problem. It doesn't play all that well. The Game Boy is obviously a lot more primitive than the SNES, and bringing a game that needed the extra hardware to work so well to the small screen clearly had some drawbacks. The country game's graphical style was drop-dead gorgeous, especially for the time, but it did not translate well to the Game Boy at all. The sprites look so blurry, and it's hard to tell what terrain you can stand on and what's just part of the background, which is kind of an issue in a platformer. The screen is also very zoomed in, making it hard to tell where to jump, and as the cherry on top, the camera can't keep up with you when you're falling, so you can die by falling off pretty much any ledge. And a lot of the levels just kind of blend together, even if they are different from the SNES game. It definitely has the most of its own identity compared to its 2 sequels, but this is easily the least polished of the trilogy, and as such, the least fun. Donkey Kong Land 2 and 3 are a lot more polished and enjoyable. You can really tell Rare got more used to the Game Boy's limited specs after 1. Despite that, while 1 was more of a companion piece to its country counterpart, 2 and 3 are more so straight-up demakes of theirs. Most of the worlds, levels, and bosses are carried over from the SNES games, just obviously downscaled and reworked to fit into the Game Boy. Remember when some games got alternate versions for weaker platforms like handhelds? These are basically that. If you want to know the exact order in which I rank these games, well, 1 is easily the weakest due to its short length and lack of polish, 3 is in the middle, and 2 is the best, because 2 is just based on a better game than 3. These games are still enjoyable platformers, and there is a bit of novelty to seeing handheld answers to big console games from the 90s. But considering the country games have been made available for several handhelds since, there isn't much of a reason to revisit these games today. Oh my god, they did it. Payon actually made a good Donkey Kong game. I did not have high hopes for DK Jungle Climber, if my thoughts on King of Swing are anything to go by, so I was decently surprised when I found it to be pretty fun. For one, the controls have been refined and feel much nicer. This could be because I played on an actual 3DS and not a keyboard, but I still found this game's controls to be way more manageable. I love how the launch attack has now been bound to the A button instead of requiring a charge hold. It makes your movement feel way quicker and smoother, and you're less vulnerable when you need to attack. The levels have also seen a significant improvement. They're a lot longer, they have more interesting themes and mechanics, and they just feel a lot more fun to blast through. The difficulty curve's more natural, with some solid challenge later on, despite the occasional cheap segment. And how can I forget Xananab, our other Lord and Savior? This game is worth existing just for giving us Xananab. While nothing groundbreaking by any means, Jungle Climber is still a solid and fairly underrated game, and it was nice to see Payon stick the landing with their third and final DK game, especially with how those other 2 turned out. Donkey Kong Jungle Beat is pure dopamine. This is a game that reverts even the most refined citizens to utter monkey brain, swinging and smashing through every corner of the jungle to defeat every foe and eat every banana. Making a 2D action platformer revolving around the DK bongos sounds like a recipe for disaster on paper, but damn it, they somehow made it work. I can't really speak for how the bongos themselves feel since I had to use a controller due to Dolphin being funky, but I honestly felt the gameplay to be pretty smooth, even with the occasional awkward controlling segment. The game has a very arcadey structure that fits its wacky control scheme quite well. Your goal is to collect as many bananas as possible while maintaining combos and defeating enemies as you go. The better you do, the more bananas you get. It's a lot of fun blasting through each world, getting as many bananas as possible, especially on repeat playthroughs for the sake of better results, something this game encourages a ton. The level design is solid and works well with this style of gameplay. Smashing up enemies is super satisfying thanks to the punchy sound design. There are multiple different styles of boss battles which mostly work well, and those helper monkeys are just hilarious. Seriously, look at him. This is a face of a banana war veteran. It's not much more than a somewhat mindless score-based romp, but Jungle Beat is still a pretty fun time that makes the most of an unconventional concept. Also, this game's director, Yoshiaki Koizumi. His and his team's next game? Super Mario Galaxy. I think Nintendo might have seen something within Jungle Beat.
Bananas.
Mario vs. Donkey Kong is somewhat of a wild card within this ranking. While it kicked off its own series, I didn't really feel like ranking with the rest of DK's lineup. I felt like I had to feature it due to it following up on DK94. Though it doesn't quite live up to its predecessor, it's a solid evolution of its puzzle platforming gameplay. Much of the game is built around these colored blocks that can be switched on and off. The game gets a lot of mileage out of these things, always finding new ways to experiment with them among other wacky mechanics, and you really have to think to get past some levels. They throw in plenty of new mechanics as the game goes on, with each world's penultimate level having you guide the mini Marios to safety in a test of everything that world taught you. And once you finish the main worlds, the plus worlds open up, where you and a mini work together to get to the exit. These levels are a really nice change of pace, and they can get creative with how you need to guide the minis around. It's not perfect, Mario's singular hit point can be annoying, and the pre-rendered graphics are certainly no Donkey Kong Country, but the original Mario vs. Donkey Kong is still a solid time, complete with some of the funniest PowerPoint cutscenes of all time. Shoutouts to the Switch remake that fully animated them and took away the funny. Also, if you're still hung up about me not wanting to rank the sequels to save time, I guess I'll put their placements in the description if I ever decide to play them.
Chaos?
Only now have we reached the first proper Donkey Kong Country game of the ranking. If that doesn't speak volumes of the series' quality, I don't know what does. Donkey Kong Country 3, Dixie Kong's Double Trouble, is the awkward middle child of the series. It didn't really break new ground like its brethren, and as such, isn't talked about as much. But with that said, it's still great. The Northern Cremisphere is a very unique setting for this game. With the Kongs being so associated with the jungle, a mountainous lakeside retreat is a nice change of pace and lends itself well to some really pretty visuals and fun levels. Even with this being the series' third yearly outing on the same system, remember when that was feasible? Rare still managed to find ways to innovate and keep things fresh. The level design remains as sharp as ever, with each level offering something new. There are tons of inventive mechanics, from jet barrels to waterfall platforming to this giant saw that cuts away the ground. Seriously, that is so cool. Only in Donkey Kong would you see saws be used in such a clever way. Plus, there's even a little bit of freedom, with you being able to choose which world to head to first sometimes, so you can explore the map a little more instead of being forced on a linear path like the usual platformer. Sure, these aren't exactly enough to make Country 3 a groundbreaking title, and as such, it still kinda lives in the shadows of its two predecessors, but that doesn't take away from it at all. What matters is that Donkey Kong Country 3 is a fun, polished, gorgeous, cleverly designed game that's well worth your time. It may still have a handful of annoying levels, but even the best games do. Just a really great game and strong conclusion to the original Country trilogy and Rare's run on the SNES.
And now we've captured him on Game Boy.
Donkey Kong for the Game Boy, commonly referred to as Donkey Kong 94, is such a novel concept. What if the primitive, 4-level long arcade original was a fully fleshed out campaign? That's a bit reductive since only the game's opening is a direct remake of the original, but after that, it's full-on puzzle platforming. The objective of most levels is to carry a key to the door and head through. It seems simple at first, especially with how bite-sized the levels are, but as the game goes on, they get progressively more and more complex. You'll need to really think outside the box to figure out how to get the key to the door as quickly and safely as possible. The levels go all in on making you think, featuring such engaging problems and solutions. You'll need to pull switches, jump on enemies, climb ropes, and even place platforms, ladders, and bridges to help you get where you need to go. And it's super satisfying putting all the pieces together and finishing a tough level. Same goes for the encounters with DK and Junior, during which you need to stay on your toes to come out on top. Due to the level's short length, you can easily pick up and play this game, blasting through numerous levels in one short session if you're good enough. It's a game that takes full advantage of it being on the Game Boy, making the most of its limited specs to create such a fun, inventive experience that wouldn't quite have the same charm on a home console. While I wouldn't quite call it my favorite Game Boy game, I think Link's Awakening might still hold that title, DK94 is a close second, one that you should really check out if you haven't already. I really wish they would add this game's side flip to a mainline 2D Mario game someday.
Did he do it?
Diddy did do it.
Diddy Kong Racing. Yep, just Diddy. He didn't bother inviting his best bud. Anyway, for a one-off racing spin-off, Diddy Kong Racing is a very fun and surprisingly in-depth kart racer. The controls are simple yet intuitive. The steering feels tight and responsive, as it should. I especially love having to take your thumb off the accelerator for a greater boost from a pad or item. It feels so satisfying letting the A button go and just zooming off. There are 3 different types of vehicles, each with their own unique sets of tracks. The hovercraft I'm a little mixed on since it doesn't do too much different from the kart on top of having weaker controls and tracks, but the plane's a lot of fun and a nice change of pace. The game also has a robust item system, where grabbing an item you already have gives you an upgraded version of that item. It's a nice risk-reward system where you can either use your current item now or hold on to it for an upgrade. The character roster is wacky with a bunch of OCs, in addition to Banjo and Conker. You bet your ass I played as my man Banjo. I also find it really funny seeing Conker in this super kiddie happy-go-lucky car racer, considering the game he'd go on to be known for a few years later. The game has a really solid lineup of tracks spread across 5 areas. They make the most of each area with varied layouts and set pieces, alongside numerous split routes and shortcuts. The silver coin challenges really make you go out of your way to explore every corner of the tracks, and okay, I'm gonna be honest, I don't really like this game's collectathon elements. It just feels like tacked on filler, and the challenges can be annoying with how precise your driving may need to be to get all the coins and win the race. The bosses can also feel a little too fast and unfair, especially Wizpig. What were they smoking with them? And the frame rate can also be pretty choppy sometimes, to the point where I had to put in a cheat code for more stability. Aside from a few issues like those, Diddy Kong Racing is a very fun ride that holds up surprisingly well today. Going from Barrel Blast to this was a huge breath of fresh air. Simply a really charming racing game that makes me a little pissed we lost Donkey Kong Racing in the Microsoft buyout.
If you do not get this amazing new generation of Donkey Kong madness, you are stupid.
For the first few years of his life, Donkey Kong was little more than Mario's monkey adversary, but everything changed with Donkey Kong Country, DK's own game, where for once he is the hero saving the day. Or is this a new Donkey Kong, or a grown-up Junior, and the original DK is now cranky? I don't know, the family tree's a mess. Giving the studio behind Battletoads the reins to one of Nintendo's OG mascots may have sounded like a ballsy choice at first, but damn it, it paid off. Even over 3 decades on, Donkey Kong Country is an absolute blast. Compared to Mario's more easygoing adventures, this game is far more hectic and treacherous. Danger lurks around every corner of the DK aisle, and you need to stay on your toes to make it through and recover the stolen bananas. Trying to hold on to each of your remaining lives until you reach Candy or Funky is so nerve-wracking yet so fun. And believe me, I played most of this game on an actual SNES. I would know. The level design is immaculate, with tons of fluid design and enticing mechanics. Even with the occasional cheap or unfun dud, the majority put up a fun, rewarding challenge that keeps you on edge. There are even quite a few secrets and bonus stages hidden here and there if you're willing to look. Visually, this game broke new ground with what the SNES could accomplish, displaying gorgeous pre-rendered visuals that still look appealing today. The dynamic backgrounds give each area such distinct auras, amplified even further by the soundtrack. It's catchy, atmospheric, and exhilarating all at once, with so many memorable pieces that contribute so much to this game's status as a timeless classic. The excellent sound design is no slouch either, with tons of glorious voice and impact bites that make each move you make something to remember. If I had to critique anything, I feel like the game kinda starts to run out of steam in the final third. forward. I just think Kremkrok Industries would have made much more sense for a final world in this game's second cave world. That and the bosses are pretty underwhelming, with all but one of them having the same background and some of them even being repeated. But even then, come on, you know it well. It's Donkey Kong Country, one of the SNES's defining games that breathed new, much-needed life onto DK, and it still kicks tail to this day.
Somehow returned.
In the decade following Nintendo's loss of Rare, DK struggled to find his identity. Thankfully, fresh off the success of the Metroid Prime trilogy, Retro Studios came along to bring him back to his 2D platforming throne with Donkey Kong Country Returns. This game is how you revitalize an old series for the modern age, taking what worked well before and adding tons more bells and whistles to truly push the series forward. Like, come on, this ain't New Super Mario Bros. We're talking about here. The levels have so much variety in their mechanics and layouts, and so many moving parts, even in the foreground and background, that just couldn't be possible on the SNES. Every level feels like a completely different experience from the last, and they feel so satisfying to blast through. You know how a lot of Nintendo games around this time tried too hard to appeal to casuals? Returns laughs in their face, delivering one of the most grueling adventures the Kingdom of Kong has ever seen. It's manageable for the first few worlds, but the difficulty ramps up a ton as the game goes on. You're sure to die many times in your mission to retrieve your bananas, but that just makes it all the more satisfying when you finally brave the toughest of gauntlets. Metroid composer Kenji Yamamoto was put in charge of the soundtrack, and while he's no David Wise, he still delivers a good soundtrack with some amazing remixes of past songs. There are a few issues though. The difficulty can get just a little excessive at times, especially on the damn rocket barrel. Seriously, how did this floaty, fragile, Flappy Bird ass gimmick make it past playtesting? On the topic of controls, I played the original Wii version, and I don't like how you're forced to shake the remote for certain basic actions like rolling. It just feels really clunky. The Tiki Tak tribe is also such a lame replacement for the Kremlings. They have such little sauce and can't compare to DK's primary adversaries. I think maybe K. Rool should have come back. Tanabe? Seriously, did this man ever make a single smart decision? Thank God we don't have to worry about him anymore. But even with its noticeable flaws, Donkey Kong Country Returns is a return with a bang. A brilliant step forward for the series, even if it lives a little in the shadow of its slightly better sequel.
Let's kick some ice.
The top 3 games in this ranking are all the most popular picks for Donkey Kong's best game, and I can get behind any of them taking home the gold. With that said, I still need to put them in some order, kicking off with Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. As great as Returns was, Tropical Freeze blows it out of the water in pretty much every way, because this game is more than a return. It's a damn evolution. This game pushes the boundaries of what 2D platforming can accomplish, displaying so much creativity and polish throughout its 7 worlds. Almost every single level is one to remember or look forward to, with each one bringing some wild new feature to the table. There are so many creative ideas at play, and the tight level design executes them so well. It's such a drastic yet natural step forward from Returns that proves just how far we've come since the SNES. There are tons of set pieces unlike anything else in the 2D platforming genre, from autumnal mountains to a radiant savanna to a huge-ass popsicle factory. Seriously, where did Retro Studios come up with all this? Dixie and Cranky have joined the roster, and along with Diddy, they provide some helpful new moves when you have them, even if Dixie's is objectively the best one by a mile. Tropical Freeze also feels a lot more forgiving than Returns. There's a steadier difficulty curve, more items at the shop, and you can take an extra hit during vehicle sections. Turns out, all the rocket barrel needed to become fun, let alone tolerable, was one more hit. Having some banger levels designed around it helps too, I guess. The boss lineup is probably the best in the Country series, which isn't a very high bar, but still. David Wise himself was brought back for this game's soundtrack, and he delivered his A-game along with Yamamoto. The Snowmads are a much cooler main threat than the Tikis, even if they still have nothing on the Kremlings. And how can I forget Funky Kong being playable in the Switch version? Any game where Funky Kong is playable is guaranteed to be peak. Okay, besides that one, I think Metroid Prime 1 might still be Retro Studios' best game, but Tropical Freeze is a close second. It more than deserves its status as one of the premier platformers of the 2010s, and the fact that it's still beloved to this day despite the poor circumstances of its release just goes to show how cool it really is.
Bananas!
The Switch era was kind of a weird time for Donkey Kong. He certainly wasn't forgotten, he had a ton of releases and events, but a brand new game was not among them. We had ports, a remake, K. Rool and Smash, pretty much everything except a new adventure. In time though, we found out why. Nintendo themselves had been working on a bold new direction for DK in the shadows for years, and when it finally launched on Switch 2, the wait was so worth it. Donkey Kong Bonanza is one of the most earth-shattering, action-packed, adrenaline-pumping games in recent memory. It is such a smashing revival for 3D Donkey Kong, building off the foundations of Mario Odyssey super well, while still completely carving its own wild identity. Remember how I said Jungle Beat devolves the player to pure monkey brain? Bonanza does that tenfold, having you destroy everything, and I mean everything in your sight, just for even a bit more banana. Satisfying does not even begin to describe the sheer mindless destruction you unleash on the enemies and terrain in this game. Having so many ways to rip everything apart, all of which feels satisfying, is just something else. They seriously map 3 of the face buttons to different punches. That should say enough. Not only is DK bigger and stronger, but he's faster too. His movement is airtight, and paired with his roll, his serve, and his ability to climb almost any wall freely, you're sure to blast through each and every layer of the underground with relative ease. And ooh boy, are those layers something to behold. First, they're visually stunning and gorgeous, unlike anything we've ever seen from Donkey Kong, or even the greater Mario franchise for that matter. The dazzling environments, the vibrant colors, the crisp lighting, it's all pure eye candy and nothing like what you'd expect from an underground world. On top of that, they vary wildly in terms of structure and layout and offer plenty of fun, unique objectives. There are hordes of gold bananas to dig up, and the skills you can unlock with their power act as a great incentive for you to go after them without forcing them on you like another game did. You can seriously beat the full game without collecting a single banana if you're good enough, but the buffs they give you make it a lot easier. With or without the banana skills, you also have access to the Bonanza transformations, and their admittedly overtuned powers crank things up even further. Between the destruction and the Bonanza forms, you have countless options to get on to the next layer with no wrong answer, in a pretty similar way to Tears of the Kingdom. I loved Pauline's role as a sidekick. Her simple character arc of finding her confidence is surprisingly effective, and she and DK just have the most wholesome me and my big animal friend dynamic. Sure, her being a kid kinda messes up the timeline, but Nintendo clearly doesn't give a shit about continuity, so who cares? Void Company is a delightful band of new villains. Void himself is such a petty little gremlin, and it's nice to see Grumpy and Poppy grow to realize he's not a boss worth their service. Oh, and while we're discussing villains, how can I forget that King K. Rool is finally back! It's such a rewarding twist that leads straight into such a tense, action-packed finale. One of the best out of any Nintendo game to date. Oh my god, this is everything one would want in a new 3D Donkey Kong game. It's a blast to play, a phenomenal spiritual successor to Mario Odyssey, full of throwbacks to the series past while still emphasizing its new style, and a brilliant start to the Switch 2's life. Easily one of the most fun games of the past few years, and the best Donkey Kong game. Starring Donkey Kong. If I had a nickel for every time in one of these rankings where the ultimate 3D love letter to the series came second to a 16-bit side-scroller, I'd have 2 nickels. Anyway, Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest is pretty much everything a 2D platformer should be. It's such a strong evolution of the first game that makes it seem like a mere appetizer in comparison. It retains everything that worked about said first game, from the tight controls to the fast-paced platforming, yet it has plenty of new tricks of its own that make it so special. You can really tell how much more use to the engine Rare was this time, given how much this game innovates with new stuff. The levels feel a lot grander and more expansive this time around, yet they still feel tightly designed and challenging. There's a lot more verticality at play, and the levels tend to go in many more directions than just left to right. You explore so many distinct set pieces, from ships to volcanoes to big beehives, in a far more treacherous journey than the one before. You're taking the fight straight to the Kremling's home to save your friend, which is reflected a ton by not just the ruthless difficulty, but also the uniquely grim tone. The eerie yet still gorgeous visuals visuals really sell the idea of you being in enemy territory. And of course, the soundtrack, probably David Wise's best work, adds so much to the atmosphere of these levels, as soothing, imposing, and catchy as the pieces need to be. The animal buddies have been promoted from hidden optional power-ups to full-time mechanics in this game. There are several levels designed around their abilities, which are fun to play around with and spice up the gameplay a lot. The bonus areas have been revamped, and there's much more of a reason to find them, with their rewards opening up secret levels. The addition of Dixie Kong, as well as her and Diddy's new team-up moves, are very helpful for exploration and platforming. All in all, Donkey Kong Country 2 just has so much more sauce than almost every other platformer I've ever played. It has its problems. The difficulty can be a little cheap at times. I don't like how you have to pay banana coins to save now, and the collectibles can be pretty hard to find without guidance from Cranky or the internet. But even then, it's fast-paced, challenging, cleverly designed, visually and musically stunning, and an absolute blast to play from start to finish. It's easily one of the best 2D platformers ever made, it's one of the best SNES games, it's Rare's best game, and of course, it's Donkey Kong's best game, even though he spent all of it in captivity. Thank you for tuning in to yet another ranking. Mario Party is next, for real this time.